Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, we see that once again the mafioso quafioso has had to basically adjust his behavior in order to try and be acceptable to a greater number of the American electorate. It's something that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have noted for the near year that we have been on air. Trump represents this untenable, unacceptable, unexplored faction. He's not really a known factor when it comes to the American system of polity, other than when you begin to dig into his checkered past with respect to who all he has funded and given his utmost support to. You begin to realize that this whole just ridiculous claim that he is some sort of a conservative begins to fall apart when you dig into it a bit deeper. And so we see that also with respect to the mafioso quafioso, that he has gone out of his way to offend people, that he tries to couch this in a claim that this is just proof that he is against the cancerous doctrine of political correctness. But I think it goes deeper than that. I think it goes to show that the man's a bully, that he's always been a bully, and that he is so used to getting his way because he is spoiled like a petulant child. But what we see is that he had gone out on the campaign trail just the other night, last night even. He has been known for his inability to say, "I'm sorry," or "I apologize," but he did take a stab at an apology. Well, at least sort of. It was made without saying exactly which comments he regretted, whether that was insinuating that Ted Cruz's father had been involved in the assassination of JFK, or whether it was about Judge Curiel, the Indiana-born judge, in the Trump University class action lawsuit for fraud, or whether it was just his general candor overall. But here's the thing. It's a little too late, and it's too little. Too little, too late. That seems to be the mantra of the Trump train throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle. And it's because he doesn't care. Truly, when you parse through what it is about the man, it's that he doesn't care. He's never once shown true interest in any of this. It's always just been about him. And you see, that's the thing that my first officer, Jeremy Graventon, and I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. It's that Donaldolph Julius Caesar Trumpolini, for the vast majority of the 70 years that he spent on God's green earth, has been about Donaldolph Julius Caesar Trumpolini and himself alone. But we realize that with respect to the American system of polity, we are expected to be a virtuous republic. This is something that Paul Wise, I believe his name was. I need to double check that, and I'll definitely look into that before we hit the next segment, in between segments here, who's running for office in Oklahoma, said he pointed back to the history of these United States of America and had a claim that John Adams had said that it is absolutely necessary for this representative republic of ours to be a virtuous republic. That means that both the electorate has to be educated in matters of faith and morality, but also the government itself. Now, I can already hear in the back of my mind some of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who are hell-bent on the complete and utter annihilation of the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people, trying to say that that can't work, that it is an explicit violation of the First Amendment's prohibition against the establishment of an official state religion. Well, here's the deal. It's not the formation or establishment of an official state religion. After all, it starts off with Congress shall make no law establishing a religion. And it's important to recall what the Founding Fathers were speaking about or with regard to when they penned the First Amendment. What it was trying to prevent was the establishment of a uniquely state-sponsored religion, a state official church, for lack of a better term. In other words, to prevent the establishment of a Church of America, to be compared to the Church of England, because a lot of what had caused the migration from the old world to the new was this notion of religious liberty. But it certainly wasn't carried out in the mindset of modern atheists or the way that the historical revisionists that infest our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border would have you believe. No, there is no connection like that. It's not to be freedom from religion, it's freedom of religion. Meaning that, again, the morality was there. They did not buy into this erroneous doctrine of, moral relativism. That didn't cross their mind. That would have been laughed out of any institution at the time as being a disgrace, as being violative of natural law. And again, it's why it's so important to realize that our entire representative Republican form of government, based on the supreme law of the land, which pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2 of our shared United States Constitution is the Constitution itself, is based on natural law tenets. That forms the bedrock foundation, the fundamental foundation of our entire system of polity. And the natural law is truly an amazing thing, because it is by its nature timeless, meaning it's just as applicable today as it was at the field of Runnymede in 1215, as it was again at the Constitutional Convention and with the ratification of the Constitution, and as it will be, God willing, many, many years, decades, and centuries from today. But of course, in order for the natural law to remain in place, the people have to be virtuous. The people have to be stalwart in proactively maintaining and safeguarding those fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, because the natural inclination of government is to encroach upon those rights. The governmental actors stand in staunch opposition to the rights and liberties of the people. That's always been the way that it is. That is how they think about things. That is what drives and motivates them. And it's a frightening thought, really, to think that we here in the United States of America have been led so far astray from our foundational principles and core values that it's literally a question now as to whether the American people understand what's there. I mean, yes, a lot do. A great many do, including our cherished listening passengers and audience members here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. But we do need to think about what these revisionists have done. They've essentially peddled this doctrine of moral relativism in conjunction with that failed ideology or philosophy of political correctness. And this is all designed with the purpose of deadening our senses, of making us think that there is no right, that there is no wrong, that everyone is in some way equal. Again, this is perverting the whole notion of equal protection under the law and a true sense of equality that was mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. What did our founding fathers mean when they went into that? Well, they meant that we would have equal opportunities, that nobody by title of birth or by socioeconomic status, and eventually even by race, or gender, would be discriminated against. We would each have an equal shot at fair treatment and being able to rise to the best of our abilities. Again, it's not equal outcomes, as the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and their allies in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, or even the historical revisionists, would have you believe. And one of the truly staggering and shocking aspects of moral relativism that is peddled by the historical revisionists is they attempt to apply modern mores to historical times and events. Recall when you look at the summer of political correctness that was the summer of 2015 in the response to that senseless and horrific shooting at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church by Dylan Storm Roof in Charleston, South Carolina, you see that they tried to apply modern mores to the American Civil War, a conflict that had just ended 150 years prior. Now, 150 years may not be a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it is a lot in that no one from that time period is alive today, and it's also enough time for social mores to change. And so if you try to apply modern social mores to past eras, it's an act of intellectual disingenuousness. It's an attempt to pull some sort of moral superiority card, when in fact there really is none to be had. The people of the North were just as adamant in their own racial beliefs at the time as those down in the South, and it really is not the reflection of a modern society. It was modern in a sense that they had burgeoning technologies, that the natural law tenets had been set down, but it's not the same thing as what we have today, for better or worse. And it's certainly unfair to try and pin people with that. Now, why do I mention this? I mention this because it explains a bit of the mindset of the moral relativists who are trying to destroy society by infesting society with moral relativism and political correctness, but it's to destroy society is their ultimate goal. That's what cultural Marxism is all about. And one of the things of cultural Marxism is fake outrage. Fake outrage and apologizing for the fact of, well, gee, I'm sorry I got caught. It has nothing to do with the shame, the sense of shame, real shame, the ability for people to be penitent and to make up for their past misdeeds and wrongs. And the reason it goes down that line is because what they're trying to accomplish is to make a permanent culture or society of moral outrage. But it's not true moral outrage because, again, morality is not considered a steadfast thing. It's not considered a concrete existence. In other words, it's this false dichotomy that they have created. It's this wandering sort of muck and moreau that they have created. And so what we see is they have essentially made it to where people don't want to apologize, because the entire modus operandi of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist is to make people perpetually to blame. That's how they can go about with this twisted race-based and gender-based and this divisiveness of identity politics. It's all part of so-called social justice, which is a great misnomer. But the point I'm trying to get at here is that Donald J. Trump's pathetic excuse of an apology there is par for the course with this type of just intellectually disingenuous muck and moreau that we live in now, that has been peddled by the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, the historical revisionists, and the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. All of this is foreign and alien to the foundational principles that propelled the United States of America to such lofty heights in our relatively brief yet illustrious history. And Donald J. Trump is just a continuation of that. He bows down to it, he acquiesces to it, and if he had his way, he would never apologize. And again, a good friend of mine actually brought this up, and makes me laugh. We could blame it on the teleprompter. Remember, that's a line that we've heard all throughout these two disastrous terms of the Barack Hussein Obama regime. It's this notion of, well, I didn't do it, pass the buck stops elsewhere. It's not that I have a say or that I have done anything, it's that all of these nefarious elements have acted against me, woe is me, pity me. But again, that really doesn't work. It doesn't work because when you go back to natural law tenets and to the way things were originally designed and intended to be, you have to hold people accountable for their actions, just as you have to hold yourself accountable. And so all of that ultimately plays out in such a way as to be a defining characteristic, indeed even a fundamental pillar of modern society. Now, we've lost touch with that, and that is by design, because these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have their twisted machinations to fundamentally and irreparably redefine the United States of America away from being that of a natural law-based, constitutionally endowed, federalist representative republic to some twisted, dark, and diabolical Fabian socialist dystopia, which is truly Orwellian in nature. But we know that Trump has never really been one to apologize. And it's part of the reason why he is consistently inconsistent. He throws out all of this subterfuge, all of this penultimate crap to try and cement a picture that is so distorted that one can't even figure out what's going on. In other words, it's to distract attention away from him. It's to push him in a direction that no one can figure out. That way he can be anything and everything to everyone. And that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable because it works against all that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And again, the onus of responsibility, the burden, the obligation falls on our shoulders, and our shoulders alone. We can't just back away from that. We can't just ignore that. That is an integral part of what we are facing here in America. So Donald Trump going out and apologizing to a nameless, faceless individual for just generalized statements that he might have made during the primary process or all throughout this disastrous 2016 presidential election cycle is in itself an act of intellectual disingenuousness. It's not rooted in reality. It's not rooted in anything that he is feeling any true remorse or regret over. And it draws me back to another statement that he made when he said that he has never once asked God for forgiveness. yet he proclaims to be a Christian. I thought the entire purpose of believing that Jesus Christ was our Savior was to seek forgiveness. To seek forgiveness for that original sin that we all live with. Is that not what salvation is about? So, in other words, this man doesn't believe in salvation, just as he doesn't believe in the natural law tenets that underpin this republic of ours, just as he doesn't believe in the Constitution and all of the rights that it safeguards. You see, that makes him a dangerous individual. It makes him the loose cannon. And again, it's why I say this just pathetic excuse of an apology that was probably just thrown into the teleprompter feed there by his staff and personnel is too little too late. He's not serious about it. He doesn't really mean it. It's just about he himself. But that doesn't bode well, because it shows that, again, the gutless opposition party, or GOP, has sold its soul. Sold its soul for what? To do what? To accomplish what? It shows that they have done it for political expediency, for lack of a better term. That's what they have aimed for. That's what their goal is. But again, that has no place in an open, honest, and above all, free society like that of the United States of America. And again, it's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have said that we must come together and foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding both of our shared United States Constitution and also of our fundamental and inalienable rights that were endowed to us by our Creator, who happens to be none other than the God of nature himself. And that means that we need to do a little bit of soul searching. It means that we need to explore deep within our own minds as to how it is that we have reached this untenable, unsustainable situation and scenario, both as a nation and as a people. It's not an easy thing to do. Nobody likes to have these prodding questions asked. Nobody likes to do this kind of soul searching because guess what's involved with it? Pain. But aside from history, pain is a great teacher. If you feel pain, you will try to avoid it. You learn to avoid the processes that cause pain, unless there's some extenuating factor, such as addiction. But we see that, for example, a child who is told by his or her parents not to touch a hot stove doesn't realize what the parents are trying to warn him about, or her about, and that child touches the stove. Well, that's a one-time learning experience. Child ain't gonna touch the stove when it's hot again. Well, that's kind of what we need to do now. That's kind of the lesson that we need to experience in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. Again, it's not a pleasant experience. It's not an experience that any of us ever truly want to go through, but it's one that we must go through if we are to overcome these hurdles, these obstacles, and adversities that are placed in our path. And again, this is not the sort of analysis you're going to hear from the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. The reason being is that would be detrimental to their twisted, frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist agenda, something that they refuse to divorce themselves from, something that they refuse to address. And why? Again, power, control, and corruption. That is the great trifecta of what is currently plaguing this once thriving and flourishing republic. That's what they use to try and eke into the societal fabric. Recall that the Fabian society, which traces its origins back to 19th century Great Britain, had adopted the original iconography of that of a wolf in sheep's clothing. The idea being, going back to Scripture, to the way that Satan would infiltrate polite society, and indeed the upper echelons of society, they wanted to be that. They want to be that twisted, radical aspect that perverts and corrupts and then ultimately destroys society from within. Remember, this is also why the Fabian Socialist Bible, Rules for Radicals, the magnus opus, if you can call it that, of Fabian socialist Saul Alinsky, was dedicated to Lucifer, the son of light, the fallen angel, a rebel. But not just a rebel, a vile rebel. A rebel who, despite his lofty position, decided to think that he was greater than anything and everything. And you see, that's the way the Fabian socialists are. They pervert humanism, they pervert all of the ideologies and philosophies that came before, and try to say that mankind must evolve past rugged individualism and the fundamental and inalienable rights that are God-given to each and every one of us in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, to a collectivist mentality, to become a collective. And Donald J. Trump proves again with this fake apology that he is about the collectivist mentality. This is why he wants to dumb down people. This is why he tries to make up words like bigly. He needs to feel superior. And therefore, he turns to the Fabian socialist agendas and plots and machinations that he has supported for the vast majority of his 70 years spent on God's green earth. And that's why he's not repentant. It's why this apology is just done to placate people. It's to say, yeah, you claim there's this problem. You claim I'm wrong for doing this, but I know better than you, and I'm just going to put this out here so you go away. It's essentially biting the hand that feeds you. But the Gutless Opposition Party, or GOP, is no stranger to that. They have always bitten the hand that feeds them. This is why they have attacked the conservative base of the party in election cycle after successive election cycle. And it further demonstrates why they do not have the best interest of the people at heart. It's something that we have been lamenting here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, going back to our premiere episode, which aired on September 11th of 2015. And so as we approach our 1-year anniversary, it's important to keep in mind exactly what it is that we are facing, what it is that we have to overcome, and what it is that will put this nation clearly back on to the path to prosperity. Because unlike what Donald J. Trump says, the United States of America never ceased being great. And again, that is why Jeremy, Nelson, and yours truly have come out so adamantly against this shallow, hollow, empty, and meaningless platitude that has become the campaign slogan of the Trump camp, or the Trump train, that of "Make America Great Again." Well, that presupposes that America ever ceased being great. America has not ceased being great. America is still great. The Constitution is still there. We are still the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. So it's an intellectually disingenuous statement. It's a intellectually disingenuous slogan. What it should be is "Make America prosperous again. Make America free again. Get the government off our backs." But Trump doesn't believe that. Go back to that long, record-breaking in length speech that Trump gave on the convention floor there in Cleveland, Ohio, upon accepting the official nomination for the Gutless Opposition Party. It was what the government would do, what he would do, how he would make the government larger. Why? Why are we embracing the same failed tactics, policies, and strategies of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who have taken complete control of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party? And remember, he said that it's the Republican Party, not the Conservative Party. The conservatives should essentially just sit down, shut up, and get in line with this tyranny of false unity. Again, none of that works. None of that builds our nation. None of that propels our nation to a good and decent position. It's just more intellectual, disingenuous fluff that has been foisted upon us by these nefarious actors who seek nothing short of the complete and utter annihilation of the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. Again, this is why it is so imperative that we stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution, as well as our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And as long as we continue to push for that, then these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists will never truly win. So let's review what Trump actually said. I've got the soundbite and I'm going to cue it up and then we'll discuss it in further depth and detail. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start that now.
Sometimes in the heat of debate and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words or you say the wrong thing. I have done that.
Yeah, you have. He has done that.
And believe it or not, I regret it.
Yeah, I don't believe it. And then you hear the Lion Branch Trump videos. Trump, 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 smoly hands.
And I do regret it, particularly where it may have caused personal pain. Too much is at stake for us to be consumed with these issues. But one thing I can promise you this, I will always tell you the truth.
Oh, yeah, right. He will always tell us the truth. Except when he doesn't, which is at any and every given opportunity. So what that tells us is that the orange one is trying to placate people. In other words, it's as I mentioned in the prior segment, that he's not sorry. He's just sorry he got caught. And he's sorry that it's distracting from the campaign trail itself. But again, that is just an engagement in intellectual disingenuousness. This man wouldn't know what honesty was if it came up and bit him in the posterior. And of course, this is what we've been trying to hit at for a very long time now here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. It shows that unequivocally the Trump train is not really about honesty. Now, they're going to feign it, just like Hillary Rotten Clinton does, and of course that brings up this whole thing that Jeremy and I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes. What is the difference between Hillary and Trump? Well, when you stop and think about it, there really is no difference between them. They really do go down the same lines. They espouse many of the same views. This is why Trump, over the years, has donated over $100,000 to the Clinton Foundation, that very thing that she is basically mired with scandal in regards to. So, again, it's an apology of regrets to unspecified comments regarding unspecified people, and he has caused personal pain. Well, on that last part, on the fact that he has caused personal pain, there is no disagreement. We have seen the Trump candidacy split and hopelessly divide the base of the gutless opposition party, or GOP. And again, that raises the nagging question of whether this was his intent from the beginning. It's quite clear that he's not really attempting to win here. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dismantled all of the logistics and ground teams in the various primary and caucus states that he won throughout the primary process. He would be more serious about his words, deeds, and actions, and the impact that it has on the campaign trail. But no, none of that crosses his mind. And in fact, this is one of those speeches that he gave in which he was reading from a teleprompter. Now, why was he doing this? Again, it's to try and make his message and his form of delivery somehow coherent, somehow as something we could believe in, something that would give us some real insight into the man himself and what he represents. But again, that's not honest. That's not true. It's all smoke and mirrors. Remember that we have said that Trump is a showman. He's an entertainer. He's a marketeer. He is the P.T. Barnum of our era. This is why we say he's a carnival barker. And he is a carnival barker. That's what he does. It's what he engages in. It's not anything that's connected with reality. It's not anything that advances a pro-American message. It's just what Trump does. And I think it's so funny that the Clinton camp had caught on to this, and I'm certainly not trying to boost or bolster or buoy the Clinton campaign. I think she is a screeching witch from hell, but when they said it was teleprompter regret, well, it is. It's the teleprompter that's feeling the regret, not the orange messiah, Cheeto Jeebus. He's not feeling regret, and he tried to just bury it in a single line and tried to say, but the issues we are facing are far too important for us to focus on that. Well, give me an ever-loving break. Part of what is truly at stake here is the heart, soul, and minds of the American people, the very vitality and viability of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, and the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of not only our Constitution, but our republic. And Trump has already shown that he does not care about the Constitution, that he has never in his 70 years of life found any inherent or intrinsic value in it. That's why he's never read it from cover to cover. This is why he goes out and says that he would defend Article 12 of the 7-article document. And of course, the Lion Branch Trumpidians have already tried to work out some blathering, blithering, moronic statement to claim that, well, he meant the 10th Amendment, because that would be the 12th article of the Constitution. Again, no, the articles and the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. Indeed, all of the amendments to the United States Constitution are wholly unique. They're separate. They're not the same thing. And clearly, the common vernacular of constitutional terms, when you say article, you mean an article within the Constitution. For instance, Article 1, Section 8 is what defines the powers and enumerates the powers of the legislative branch of government. Article 2 is what defines and enumerates the powers of the executive branch of government, meaning the president and the armed forces. And then Article 3 is what defines many of your courts. Now, yes, there are rare exceptions. There are such things as Article 1 courts. These are courts that are created by Congress for a specific purpose, such as the bankruptcy courts. But you see, that's what the articles are. But there is no Article 12. And so it really should be baffling to anybody who wants to claim the title of a constitutional originalist to believe that the mafioso quafioso is serious about the Constitution, that he even understands what's contained in the clear and concise language of its four corners. Well, he has shown on a demonstrable level that he does not understand what's in it, that he doesn't know how to read it, and that this is all just about him. And it's frustrating, overly frustrating, because there is this sort of intellectual disingenuousness that has started to run rampant on the arena of American politics. And so, again, this is why we have to pause and ask ourselves these probing, soul-searching questions in order to root out these problems, in order to find the practicable and real-world solutions that will help free the American people from the chains of governmental tyranny, bondage, and servitude, and ultimately oppression as well, so that they can go about the duty, obligation, and above all responsibility of placing this nation back onto the path to prosperity. But in order to understand that role, we have to understand the Constitution. And the leader of the free world, whose first activity or first action, having secured the election, will be to raise his or her right hand and swear the oath to uphold and defend the Constitution to the best of his or her ability against all enemies, whether they be foreign or domestic. Now, how can that happen? With the two candidates for the mainstay political parties and the American system of polity, neither one of them believes in adhering to the Constitution. Neither one of them is working to advance the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. And again, I think this is one of the major areas where the Lion Branch Trumpidians and the Hildebeests are lacking understanding with respect to constitutional compositionists such as yours truly, such as a vast majority of our cherished listening passengers and audience members. They think that our loyalty is just to a singular individual, to a singular two-dimensional ideology, and that's just not true. We're not primarily upset with Trump over his foul treatment of Texas Senator Ted Cruz throughout the primary process. We're not upset with Hillary Rotten Clinton because of the stupid things she said. We're upset with them because they are going to double down on the failed policies that have placed America in the death spiral that she is currently plagued with as I sit here and speak into this microphone. So again, it boils down to being something of greater magnitude than what they're saying. It's bigger than that. And again, it goes to this whole notion that old adage applies, that the sum is greater than its parts, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Well, that applies to the United States of America. It particularly applies when you recall that the United States of America is based on these natural law tenets which by their nature are timeless. So why is honesty such an important thing? Well, it is important because we have to be virtuous. We have to be a virtuous republic. And it is such an important aspect and pillar of an open, honest, and above all free society that's why in our court systems, whenever you are about to give testimony, we have you swear an oath. Swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Now, the atheists want to get rid of that. The Islamo-fascists want to pervert and manipulate that by infecting our legal system and our judiciary with Sharia law, which we've done a past episode on covering exactly how that is incompatible with our natural law and our constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic. So again, it goes to the heart of the matter. It's the crux of the problem. It's the fulcrum point of this villainy, for lack of a better term, that is plaguing this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And so if Trump is trying to sit there and say that these issues are far too important, the issues that he's been pushing, which nobody really knows what his true positions are. He hasn't given any policy specifics or anything that would suggest that he really means anything that he said. Because if you recall, he's gone out before and said that anything he said on the campaign trail is nothing more or less than mere suggestions subject to change. Well, that means we don't know what he believes. But none of those things are as important as maintaining our conservative values, as preserving, promoting, and strictly adhering to the clear and concise language within the Constitution. It's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have so oft times reiterated on previous episodes that the most important thing, the key to unlocking the chains and shackles that are hampering the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, from placing this nation back onto the path to prosperity, from engaging in the pursuit of happiness, which is one of those fundamental and inalienable God-given rights that was first mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, that was further expounded upon by the Constitution. We have to get to that key that has been with us since the inception of this representative republic of ours is the Constitution. And again, the major problem that we have with the two mainstay competitors for the political parties that have dominated the American system of polity for 151 years, it all ties in to being a disconnect. It all ties into a false dichotomy, a system that does not work in our favor. Now, why? Why is it that we need to bow down to that or accept that as the way that things are meant to be, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth? That's not who we are. That's not what defines us. The Constitution defines us. But we see that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, who have always had this agenda of ultimately annihilating the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people, don't want us to look to the Constitution. That's why they try and change its meaning by claiming that it's merely negative rights, because remember, they want to provide for rights that are not codified within the Constitution, which is violative of the Ninth Amendment. So why do they do that? It's all part of this twisted game of semantics. That's something that we've warned about since the airing of our premiere episode on September 11th of 2015. It shows that semantics is how they hope to dupe those who are not paying attention, those who are just so wrapped up in trying to sustain their quality of life, their standard of living, and their creature comforts, which is something that Zygmunt Dobbs sounded the alarm about in his magnus opus of Keynes at Harvard. It's all about obfuscation. It's all about subterfuge. It's all about replacing the ultimate ends with penultimate concerns. And that's what happens when you don't have a moral compass. And again, this is why there has been this push by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, the historical revisionists that infiltrate our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border, and just the Fabian socialists. What they want to do is to destroy society from within. And that speaks to this Frankfurt School, which was a position or a movement of Fabian socialists to incrementally step into society itself, to incrementally replace the things that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, to set it on a path that it was never originally intended to go down. And so again, this explains why the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists are so against believing that there are natural law tenets, that there are these things that by their nature are timeless and greater than they are. It's a form of arrogance, it's a form of hubris, but again, it all ties into their end goal. And this is why the Fabian socialists are always just so rabid to politicize everything, to try and corner everything into a box, to redefine who we are, both as a nation and as a people, to ultimately destroy us. Think back to what Roger Nash Baldwin said when he was explaining the reason why he was going about to help establish and create the American Civil Liberties Union. He said that we must use the Constitution to destroy the Constitution. Now, that is a truly wicked ideology. That is a truly wicked philosophy. It's destructive. It's nefarious. It's truly flabbergasting that this is something that they would sit there and promote. And it shows you how intellectually disingenuous they are. It shows you how willing they are to plunge into the tried and true tactic and strategy of divide and conquer, irrespective of how threadbare that has become. And again, it goes to this notion from Sololinsky in his Bible for the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist movement, and that is, you need to have an enemy. You need to target someone. You need to polarize that target, and you need to essentially transform them into a caricature. Well, on the national stage and within party politics, partisan politics, you see the way that Obama does it with the Republicans all the time. Oh, it's the Republican war on women. Oh, the Republicans thwarted me. Oh, these evil, badly nasty Republicans. When in fact it's his own words, deeds, and actions that created the quagmire that's up there. It's his own words, deeds, and actions that are diametrically opposed to the supreme law of the land, which, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, is none other than the Constitution itself. Again, this is the false narrative that they put out. And of course, he finds willing allies and aid from the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. They too want to double down on this. They too want to paint this just erroneous picture for a Fabian socialist dystopia. But where it's most nefarious and where it's most dangerous is within the confines of the ivory tower of academia. Because within the ivory tower of academia, the revisionists, those who push for Common Core education, again, it's all designed to tear down the natural order of things. Again, there it is, the natural law, the very thing that forms the bedrock foundation of our Constitution and our cherished republic. They want to take the constitutionally endowed parental rights away from parents. They want to take the onus of self-accountability, self-responsibility, and those things acting in concert with one another to create self-determination. Now, why? Because they want to make you, and indeed all of us, holistically dependent upon the federal government. Again, it's that old, tired trope of Cloward and Piven. Now, Cloward and Piven, as you may remember that we've mentioned on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, were two egghead academicians from Columbia University. And the goal that they were espousing, the goal that they were hoping to readily achieve, was to basically use the primitive safety net that had been established by that frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist Franklin Delano Roosevelt in Social Security to overwhelm the system. If the system becomes overwhelmed, then they postulate that the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, would bend at the knee at the altar of the almighty state and demand that it come and provide us with a solution, even if that meant we'd have to surrender our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And this ties into the historical revisionists because when you look at the millennial group, this age group of which I am technically a part, so many of them are sitting there saying that the Second Amendment shouldn't be an impediment to stripping decent, law-abiding, hard-working, red-blooded American citizens of their fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms. Again, this is because they are not taught the true history of the United States. They're not taught why the Second Amendment was included within the Bill of Rights or the first 10 amendments to our shared United States Constitution. And again, it's an intellectually disingenuous position that they presuppose and that they support and that they have foisted upon the up-and-coming generation, so that they are hoping to fundamentally and permanently transform the United States of America away from being a natural law-based, federalist, representative Republican form of government into some dark, twisted, and diabolical, frothing at the mouth, Fabian socialist, Orwellian dystopia. Now, folks, I don't want to live in an Orwellian-style government, where Big Brother is sitting there watching your every move, where big government is there infiltrating and infesting and dominating the facets of our daily lives, because I truly believe in the foundational philosophy of the United States, this of freedom, that of the Enlightenment era ideology that human dignity and rugged individualism matter. And you see, that's the tragedy of it all. They want to strip and deprive us of our ability to think for ourselves, to act for ourselves, to embetter society through our own actions. They forget the whole idea and notion that society is like a fabric. It's why we call it the societal fabric. But what makes up society? What makes up any fabric? It's the individual threads. So the strength, the purity, and the preciousness of any given cloth or fabric is found within its individual fibers. That speaks to the importance of our individual rights, and it also explains why our founding fathers had always designed this nation to be not a democracy, as the historical revisionists would have you believe, a term, a misnomer that has been thrown around nonchalantly now for the past century and a half, but a representative republic. And again, I have to point to the definition that great founding father, Benjamin Franklin, gave to a democracy. A democracy is two wolves and one sheep voting on what's for dinner. Well, if the wolves are allowed to have their way each and every time, that's one dead sheep. That's what's known as a tyranny of the majority. But the whole onus of a direct democracy also allows there to be a singular veto vote. Think back to how Poland was plagued with that in their direct democracy, where one vote could stop everything. If that were the case, what's known as a tyranny of the minority, the sheep would be able to prevent the wolves from ever having dinner, so they'd starve to death. The perfect harmonious balance is found within a representative republic, because within a representative republic, the fundamental and inalienable rights of the individual popular sovereign are protected, not just the rights of the majority, or the rights of an insular and discrete minority. And you see, that's why the so-called Democrat Party engages in identity politics. It's why they push for division. It's why they hope to pit American citizen against American citizen in the hopes that we tear out each other's jugulars. It's all based on this idea that only collective groups have rights that are respected. That's a problem. That's wholly against the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And so it requires that we look at this in true fashion to try and understand why it is that they would engage in this. Well, again, it's that they want control, power and control. It's why Alexis de Tocqueville said that anyone who supports any flavor, form, or facet of socialism is just, in point of fact, a New Age feudalist. Now, if you recall, feudalism was that caste system developed in the medieval period, shortly after the fall of Rome, to try and protect communities from the destructive forces of anarchy and barbarism. But it didn't work. It didn't work because it elevated a certain group of elites above everyone else and didn't recognize individual human dignity. That's why the natural law tenets are so important. That's what was so revolutionary about our founding fathers when they said that we, the people, are the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty. Stop and think about that for a moment, folks. That had never been done before. That is why the opening lines to the preamble to our shared United States Constitution begins with, "We, the people, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States in order to create a more perfect union." There you have it. That is what is unique about these United States of America. One of the things that we have recently been mentioning with regard to the Trump train is how it's basically formed this incestuous relationship with Trump-Bart media, or Breitbart media. And a lot of what that comes down to is not just hiring this former Breitbart exec in Stephen K. Bannon, but it's also in the way that Trump-Bart media sold its soul. Just essentially assumed a position in which it was being Trump's Pravda. Now, it's not the only one that's done this. Matt Drudge has done it. Lush Bimbo has done it. Sean Hannity has done it. Michael Weiner Savage, Laura Inkampf, all of these people have done it. But with Trump-Bart, if you remember Matt Boyle with Trump-Bart, he had sent a letter, had basically created this fraudulent letter attacking Trump in order to try and get former Trump-Bart reporter Michelle Fields fired. Now remember, Michelle Fields had basically come to fame during the primary process when former Trumpanzee leader Corey Lewandowski had grabbed her with enough force to bruise her and had physically accosted her, and the Lion Branch Trumpidians did their utmost to claim that she was lying, that it wasn't real, and that we were all just fools, and then they engaged in the same type of character assassination that has become a part of the Trump mission, the way that Trump goes about dealing with anyone who stands against him. And so they wanted to get rid of her. They just want to punish her. Again, adopting that mentality and mindset of their own fearless leader in Cheeto Jeebus, the Jim Jones of the Gutless Opposition Party, or GOP. Of course, if this seems intellectually disingenuous on their part, it's because it is. It shows once again that there is nothing virtuous about Donald J. Trump. There's nothing virtuous about what he is trying to orchestrate. But why? Why is it that this has become the new norm, and this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours? We shouldn't allow this. We shouldn't just sit there and adopt cultural Marxism, because that's what this is. These are the tried and true tactics straight out of Joseph Goebbels' Principles of Propaganda. And if you recall, Joseph Goebbels was Adolf Hitler, or the Nazi leader's, minister of propaganda. He's the one that tried to paint the Nazis in a pretty picture, tried to give victory at any cost, and to dupe the German people. And he was mostly successful with it during the Third Reich. And we know that Trump has an affinity for the Third Reich. That's why he used to keep a book of Adolf Hitler's speeches next to his bed, at least according to a deposition of his first wife, Ivana Trump. It's why he retweeted fascist Italian leader Benito Mussolini. It's why he has embraced the alternative right, or alt-right, and none of that is acceptable. None of that should be welcomed in an open and honest, but above all free society like that of the United States of America. And that's the crux of the problem. That's what we're facing in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. It is an untenable, unsustainable, unbelievable situation that we find ourselves in as I sit here and speak into this microphone conveying this message unto you. So why would they do that? Why would they try and get Michelle Fields fired? Well, it's retribution. It's revenge. If you ever notice that is one of the central pillars of Trump's campaign style, that he wants to just attack anyone who goes against him. And in fact, it brings up something that he said, something that is very similar to what Adolf Hitler said at the end of his life, shortly before he committed suicide in that Berlin bunker as the Soviets were descending upon him. And that's this. If Trump loses the election, he will never forgive the American electorate. Now juxtapose that to what Adolf Hitler said. If the German people are so weak that they will give in and surrender instead of fighting to the death, then he has no tears to weep for them. They deserve to be annihilated and destroyed. Now, that's the similar type of mentality. And of course, I have a very dear friend who I still respect despite the positions that that friend has taken during this 2016 presidential election cycle, that says there is no connection or similarities between what Donald J. Trump says and does and that which Adolf Hitler did, or that which any other tin-pot fascist dictator and strongman had said. And part of what she does to bolster that claim is she mentions a funny tagline that her dad brings up, and that is this, that, well, Trump wrote The Art of the Deal, How to Get Rich, and Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. Well, first of all, Trump didn't actually write The Art of the Deal, a ghostwriter did. Hitler did dictate Mein Kampf. Hitler actually wrote Mein Kampf. It was Rudolf Hess that transcribed it for him, but it was still a work of his creation. He didn't have a ghostwriter. It was his own dark, twisted machinations being put on the page in black and white. Trump, on the other hand, had a ghostwriter, somebody who was there to promote it, somebody who was there to make it fit his goal and to make it a marketing scheme. That's literally what it came down to. That's what it was. It wasn't an act of true, genuine intellectual capacity. It was a marketing scheme. And as we have so oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, marketing is what Trump excels at. That is who Trump is. It's what he has done. It is what has possessed him for the vast majority of his 70 years spent on God's green earth. But of course that has no connotation or connection with reality. That doesn't reflect the true nature of what we're facing in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And it's tragic that we find ourselves in this situation, that we find ourselves so disconnected from reality and so distant and divorced from the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And the only way that we can come to terms with it and correct it and find a practicable real-world solution is to stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity, accepting our duty, obligation, and above all responsibility as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. Now, that's not an easy position. It's not an easy burden to bear, but it is our burden to bear. Nobody else has that duty, obligation. No one else has been endowed with that authority. That is ours, and ours alone. And if you think about it, objectively, that is what our founding fathers intended for this nation to be. It's back to the inherent distrust that they had of centralized power and authority. Because if you recall, that long, drawn-out, bitter, and bloody struggle, known as the American War of Independence, was waged against the overbearing, centralized authority of king and crown and parliament. That's what our founding fathers were fighting against. That is why they devised this revolutionary system in which sovereignty, ultimate sovereignty, rested in the hands of we the people. So we see that our representative republican form of government is based on delegated power and authority that you can only have government with consent of the governed. These are the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of our representative republic and indeed our Constitution. So to preserve that, we have to be vigilant. It's our duty, obligation, and responsibility to proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. But the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists don't believe that. They are the ones that want to sit there and go about retribution. And I think that's why Trump went out of his way to say that if the American electorate refuses to vote for him, he'll never forgive them. Well, I didn't realize that exercising our conscience to vote our conscience and our feelings was some wrong thing. But it apparently is in this 2016 presidential election cycle. And the reason that it is in this one is if you go back to the speech that Ted Cruz gave on the convention floor there in Cleveland, Ohio, you recall that there was the booing that went up when he told people to vote their conscience. Now, voting your conscience is an integral pillar, a fundamental pillar of what it means to be a popular sovereign in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. There's no way to ignore that. That is a quintessential aspect of our national heritage, character, spirit, and above all, identity. But you see, with the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist agenda, those leftists who are hell-bent on utterly annihilating the United States of America both as a nation and as a people, they don't care about the true nature and freedom and ability of the American people. It's about control, power, and corruption. That's what they work towards. That's what they're hoping to achieve. That's what they're hoping to foist upon us against our will. And so you see, they try to obliterate the notion of government by consent of the governed. That's the only way that there is legitimate government, and they loathe and despise that because it gives us an avenue upon which to challenge their authority, upon which to tell them where they can go, which is straight to hell, and it gives us the ability to put our foot down and say no. No, you cannot strip and belittle and abridge us of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, because as my first officer Jeremy Grapington has so oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, without our rights we're left with nothing. Truly, without our rights we are left with nothing, and that is unacceptable. That is untenable, and that's part of the reason why we are in this disastrous position that we are as I sit here and speak into this microphone. But truth be told, ladies and gentlemen, the ability to overcome this rests with us. Again, it is all part of this notion of self-responsibility, self-accountability, working in conjunction to provide us with self-determination. And again, this is why the founders said it was so important to have a virtuous republic, to have a republic in which the electorate was engaged and was knowledgeful or knowing of the way that our system of polity works. That's what suffrage and voting is all about. That's what a truly open, honest, and free government is about. Now, it's not that we believe in anarchy. Anarchy is what results when you effectively transform the United States of America away from being a nation of laws and not of men to being a nation of men. The selective enforcement of the law. That's where we are now. That's where they're trying to force us now. And it's unacceptable. It is truly unacceptable because it is forcing us into a position where our traditions, our values, and our institutions are under a well-orchestrated, incessant, and deliberate assault. They are assaulting it. And this is what their goal is. It is to fundamentally, radically, permanently, and irreparably transform the United States of America away from being a constitutionally endowed, federalist, representative republic into some unrecognizable, unacceptable, and unfathomable frothing at the mouth, Fabian socialist, Orwellian dystopia. But we can't afford to go down that path. We cannot allow our freedoms, our liberties, our way of life to be eradicated in such nonchalant fashion. It's destructive. It's disingenuous. It's irresponsible, for lack of a better term. So we must come together and resist this. But they are the ones that are making this difficult. And that's part of the problem with the bizarre ascendancy of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian, Donald J. Trump, who also happens to go by on any day the two alter egos of John Barron and John Miller. Again, it's not connected to our values. It's not connected to our national identity. It's not connected to any of that. It is just their attempts to fundamentally, permanently, and irreparably redefine us. So we see that they are going down to attack us at every given opportunity. And it's shocking. Now here's an interesting thing. The leftist website of Gawker is to shut down next week. Now I don't know if this is permanent. Let me just take a quick gander at this. If it is, it's kind of funny. Yes, after nearly 14 years of operation, Gawker.com will be shutting down next week, so it's permanent. Again, it shows that we, the people, have a control over the market, that these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists can and will be held accountable for their words, deeds, and actions. And again, that ties into Target. Target has been in the news as of late. They're going to be spending tons of money to install individual stalls in response to the fervor and uproar that occurred with their gender-neutral bathroom push. Again, like Trump's apology, this is too little too late. And again, that is a perfect juxtaposition as to what was occurring with respect to Trump's apology. It's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, and why we also believe that our cherished listening passengers and audience members would agree with us on this, that it's too little too late, that it's not true, that this is just, once again, part of the symptoms of the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism. Well, that can't be allowed to continue. That can't be allowed to be carried out to fruition because, again, it is detrimental, harmful to the natural law tenets that underpin this nation. And it's also detrimental to who we are as a nation and as a people. But with Trump, we see the projection continues. We see that he continues to push divisiveness, even though it really works against him. It harms his campaign. And we see that it's clearly a big enough problem that his campaign staff and personnel were worried enough to feed this into his teleprompter. But was it heartfelt? No, it was not heartfelt. He didn't really mean it. He didn't really believe it. And that's the problem. If you are going to apologize, be genuine about it. Don't lie to us. Well, he says he's not lying to us, but that's all he's ever done, ever since he officially threw his quaff into the ring back in July of 2015. Donald J. Trump has been a pathological liar. That's another character trait and characteristic that he shares with Madam Thunder Thigh Clinton herself. And remember, one of the great lines with her was back when she was in Serbia, getting ready to go talk to some kids. She said she was under sniper fire. No, she really wasn't. Again, that's just pathologically lying, trying to get a sympathy card pulled for her, engaging in this Brian Williams type of exaggeration, which truly is laughably stupid and funny. But here it is. Here it is. They are the ones that create a double standard. And we want to talk about the double standard that they have created because it's unacceptable. We shouldn't accept their double standard, but according to the Daily Caller, there's been a feminist magazine which said that if Hillary Clinton, or not Hillary, but Bill Clinton, had raped Juanita Broderick, he really wouldn't be a bad guy. So it was in Wonkette. And we all know that Wonkette has been this pillar of the twisted identity politics that is the bread and butter of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and the so-called social justice warriors. And so they decry rape everywhere. That's why you see magazines like Rolling Stone that got in trouble for printing that made-up rape case. This is why, some time ago, the Duke Lacrosse rape case that turned out to not be true were brought to the forefront and shook up and destroyed people's lives. It's about that. That's what they do. They are destructive. They embrace destruction. They don't know what it is to create. They don't know what construction as opposed to destruction is. But we here at Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer understand the difference. We here at Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer are about supporting and promoting our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because without our rights, as we have mentioned before, we're left with nothing. The government then carries the power, the authority, and the ability to tell us what we can do, how much we can make, what we can eat, whether we live or die. That is the type of power and control that they wish to possess. But when you stop and think about it and parse it out, it's not real. It's not decent. It's not good. Because the old adage that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely comes to mind. It comes directly to mind because what they do is attempt to tear us down with all of these penultimate concerns. And of course that is what the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs tried to warn us about in his magnus opus of Keynes at Harvard. He said that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists would infiltrate society and then begin to overzealously regulate the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, so that we lose sight of what's important, so that we are just so inundated with the struggle to maintain our standard of living and our quality of life that we lack the political capital, power, wherewithal, and energy to stay on top of things. And then they intellectually, disingenuously attempt to couch it in these fluff terms, these terms of art, these buzzwords. And have we not seen the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism carry that out to its logical extreme? You see, all throughout the disastrous 2 terms of this Barack Hussein Obama regime, they have gone out of their way to make people shut down their mental faculties and their reasoning to respond to words such as racism. That's why the race card has become such a threadbare thing. They've overused it. They've overexerted it. They have attempted to create a new system out of it. But we, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, must reject that. We must resist it. We must discard it as the worthless fluff that it truly is. It is rubbish, and it is designed to pit American citizen against American citizen so that we are attempting to tear out each other's jugulars and to go down an unacceptable path. Well, we should reject that path, because that path has no connection to the foundational image that our founding fathers envisioned at the inception of this nation some 235 years ago. Our founding fathers, in their infinite wisdom and foresight, handed us the greatest birthright of any people on the face of God's green earth. And of course, that birthright is none other than the greatest social compact or contract ever devised by the hands of men, yet divinely inspired by providence above. And that of which I speak is none other than our share United States Constitution. It truly is a magnificent and beautiful thing. It guarantees our rights. It protects us from governmental incursion and encroachment. Yet, many of the Lion Branch Trumpidians have come out and said that we shouldn't be focusing on the Constitution. In fact, the alt-right, or the alternative right, are just loathsome and hateful towards traditional conservatives and constitutional conservatives, because they think we embrace archaic ideas, antiquated ideas, that the Constitution cannot apply to modern society. But it's a bunch of bovine excrement, just as their entire movement is a bunch of bovine excrement. It has no basis in logic, no basis in reality, and should not be welcome in a freedom-loving society and an open and honest society like that of these United States of America. And again, the onus of combating that, the duty, obligation, and above all, responsibility of maintaining our way of life falls squarely on our shoulders and our shoulders alone. Now, you won't hear that from the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. You won't hear that from the sellouts like Lush Bimbo, Sean Wannity, Michael Weiner Savage, or Laura Inkampf, or little orphan Annie Yap Yap Toto Coulter the Floozy. Why? Because they realize that it would discredit this movement that they have sold their soul to, that it would show them for the frauds, the hucksters, and the carnival barkers, and the opportunists that they themselves have become. And it is a tragic state of affairs that we find gripping this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. But the only ones who know how to resolve this are we the people. It's just that we've merely forgotten it. We have allowed these nefarious forces to distract us, to pull us away from that which ultimately and truly matters. But it is not beyond repair. We have not reached the point of no return. So many people have been trying to go out and proclaim that conservatism and constitutional originalism is dead. No, it's not dead. But we must adapt to the problems that face us. We must be willing to take the steps that are necessary to safeguard and proactively maintain our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, because again, no one else will do that for us. By the very design of our government. Conservatism will overcome this. The nation will overcome this. We will regroup. We will rebuild. After all, isn't that what America does? America has always been a force of creation, a force of good, a force that is unstoppable and insurmountable. But the only way that it occurs is when we, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, believe that we can do this, believe that we can overcome these hurdles, obstacles, and adversity. It's how we were able to vanquish the Japanese and Nazi Germany in World War II. It's how we've been able to overcome every challenge and calamity that has ever been foisted upon us. That is the message of empowerment that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, wish to deliver to you. Because when you foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our United States Constitution, then you can stand up for your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And that's what we must do. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. If you don't want alcohol, she'll apologize to you, but won't mean it. As always, folks, I'm your Captain, Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for choosing to fly with the Wright Flyer. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them either here at our YouTube page or at our Facebook page. Or if you follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX, one more time, folks, at Radio Aviation EX, you can leave it there too. Also, on our Twitter page, you'll find our departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my First Officer Jeremy Grapington, our Blogspot account that has audio blogs and is chock full of other useful information, and the Cafe Press account. Now, at the Cafe Press account, you're going to find all sorts of trinkets and goodies, apparel, tote bags, drinking glasses, shot glasses, hats, clocks, watches, neckties, you name it, we've got it at reasonable prices. Go ahead and take a look at that. It has our original logo on it, or our first-class passenger logo on it. Be proud to tote around the fact that you are endowed with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment by joining us here at radio aviation excellence, the Wright Flyer. Folks, we'll see you next time. Do take